Welcome back to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. 3-0. Did you ever think that we would be 3-0? All the haters out there. Did you ever think that the Pittsburgh Steelers would be 3-0? Especially after last week, a couple of 2-0 teams, and the Steelers were the ones that came out on top. 3-0, David, for the first time since your favorite year, 2020.
Oh, gosh. I can't believe it. I mean, I was not one who was thinking that we were going to start 3-0. I was, concerned for every game, but for all accounts and purposes, this was our best game out of the three, which I got to say, it was a pleasant surprise. I didn't get to watch it live. I was driving and actually meeting with my girlfriend's parents and, driving back, and I was on the phone with my dad on the way back, and the game had already ended, and he was kind of filling me in on what was going on. And I was like, oh, my goodness. Like, it sounded like we did really good. And then I was like, we'll see, though. And then I watched the game, and I was like, wow. Like, that was a good game. And, yeah, it was a sigh of relief to be able to see us play that good.
Well, I mean, I was texting you before you had actually watched the game, and I was like, dude, you got to watch this game in its entirety, because it was probably the best played game that the Steelers have had in years, like literal years. I can't even describe just quite how easy it looked, honestly. I mean, it was very methodical on offense, and the defense was just lights out. And I can't really describe just how easy it was. They were down early. Quinn Johnston had a touchdown.
Yeah,
and he didn't do much else than that, but the Quinn Johnston touchdown helped me to get, I think, 9 or 10 fantasy points or something like that, and I still lost by 100, so that didn't mean anything. But anyway, so the Steelers were down at halftime. Let's paint this picture. The Steelers are down at halftime, and I wasn't concerned in the slightest. I was not worried, which is very, very uncharacteristic of the Steelers. The way that they poised themselves this week made it look like that they were going to win that game no matter what happened, and they did, which is something that I can't say that I've experienced that in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, the second half domination, for both sides of the ball, was ridiculous. I think that I'm just going to say it like I was kind of tiptoeing around it last week. I'm going to say when we're healthy, we have the best defense in the league. I don't think you can really dispute it after these first 3 weeks. We've held our opponents to 10, 6, and 10. And I saw a stat. The last time the Steelers held their opponents to 10 or less points in the first 3 weeks was 1973.
Holy crap.
It's been 50 years. So I think that this defense is generational. And, we got an offense now that I think our defense believes in. I think that's been the problem with the past 3 years is we've had a great defense, but it's, they're like, oh, well, we got to go back to this offense. We're not going to be able to hold out forever. But with the offense we have right now, especially the way they played in the second half, I think our defense is kind of oh, my goodness, if we do our job, they're going to score or we're going to win, And I think it's a great setup. And, I think that one little concern is that just kind of the Broncos game, we had one good half of offense kind of on both sides. However, actually, we had a good drive on the first half. So, I agree. Both sides of the ball, the best they've looked.
Well, and then a part of that, too, I think is just being at home, I think helps that a lot. And so for some context, I guess, I'm in Pittsburgh for the first time in a long time. I'm actually getting the opportunity to live in the Pittsburgh area for the next several months. And the buzz around here is just that, they believe in this team. The Steelers fans in Pennsylvania believe in this team. Everybody around Pittsburgh has Steelers fever right now, and it's really cool to see because, Pickett last year, did anybody actually believe in him? I think you believed in him for a little bit,
gosh.
but
I really tried.
I know you tried, but I don't think anybody else legitimately believed in Pickett. But the difference is, I think people actually truly believe in Justin Fields. And I think Justin Fields, I don't know if he's ever had as much of a fun time as he's had in these last 3 weeks. I mean, you're an Ohio State guy, so you saw him a little bit more than I did before he was in the National Football League. I mean, does it seem like he's having a fun time?
Yeah. I think honestly, it's been a while. I was watching Ohio State. I remember he would make big plays and stuff, but I think that, I haven't seen, especially with on the Bears, he's just playing just smart football, good football. It looks like a united offense. Like, they're really, I think they got a lot of chemistry and they all love each other and like working together, like Pickens and Fields and Najee and Freiermuth and Calvin Austin making a play. I've been on the hype train for Calvin Austin ever since the beginning of last year, and everyone's like, oh, who even is that guy? Well, guess what? He's the guy who scored like a 50-some yard touchdown last week, so I don't want to hear it anymore. I like Calvin Austin. He's awesome, and I think that our offense is just gelling. Like, we're just getting along. We're getting it done. The second half rushing attack, specifically with Najee, was great. And, I mean, I don't really have a lot of negatives coming out of this game.
Which is very uncharacteristic of David, because you always seem to find a negative in something. But even when I was texting you earlier this week, you were like, man, this might be the most positive episode we've ever had on this podcast, because there were just so many positives. Now, I do want to talk about the offense just a little bit more, in a little bit more detail, just for a moment. So, would you agree with this? I'll ask you this question. So that 2-yard run from Justin Fields at the goal line for that first touchdown, would you agree that the Steelers have had trouble punching touchdowns in from that yardage marker in the last couple of years?
Oh, yeah. I think that it even goes back to Todd Haley as the offensive coordinator. He struggled to get the ball in the end zone. So I'd say, yeah, it's been a good 6 years or so where we just have not been able to get the ball in the end zone in that red zone thing. So that was great to see, and the play worked perfectly.
So the run pass option and the Fields mobility allows that to happen. Again, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, but we haven't had that availability in a long time. I mean, probably since before the two of us were actually even watching football. And I think that ability to create touchdowns when you're 5 yards and in, again, I think that just adds to the fluidity of this offense, something that we haven't had in a long time. And, you talked about it too. You were waiting to see if Fields could actually score touchdowns. And the whole thing is that, yes, he can when he's given that opportunity. I think if we get in the red zone, I mean, have we had to settle for a field goal in the red zone yet? That's
actually a good question. I'm not sure. I think that the only time we haven't scored in the red zone is on that 4th down in Atlanta.
Right. Yes. I think that's the only time that's been the case. And obviously, you had the big 55-yard bomb to Calvin Austin, which, okay, again, we're talking more about these little details. That throw was so insanely perfect, I can't even wrap my head around it. Austin wasn't even coming loose by the time Fields threw the ball, and he picked it in between 3 defenders. And it was so on point. It got him right in stride, and exactly what you need to do with Calvin Austin. If you get him in stride, he is going to burn past the secondary because he's so freaking fast. This is what we've been waiting for. This is the unlocking of this offense that we have been yearning for the past 2 years. And I think Arthur Smith is starting to find a way to unlock it. And you have to give me my roses here. I said that they would open things up in the last couple of weeks, and I said that this week they were going to have to open it up a good bit, and they did. They have continued to just make this offense work better every single week. And you have to give Arthur Smith some credit.
Oh, absolutely. I think Arthur Smith is doing a great job, and I agree. I think the offense looks more and more open, looks more and more wide, with more in depth, and I'm loving it. I'm constantly being like, oh, like okay, like that throw, like you were saying, great throw, middle of the field,
Down the field,
right? Yeah, middle of the field, down the field, and I will give credit, to you and for what your guess, and also to Arthur Smith for just calling a solid offense and continue. I'm appreciative that he opens it up. I think that the problem with coordinators in the past has been like, oh, that worked, let's stay with that. And then they learn trial by fire, and then they're like, oh, well, now we got to open it up. And I think that I love that he's just doing it anyways and starting to open it up. And, yeah, to Justin Fields, his throws, I honestly didn't see a bad throw. Now, the interception, I wouldn't even say that was a bad throw. I think that, it was a tight throw. It was a good defensive play. It shouldn't even have been intercepted. And so I think, and of course, Bud Dupree was the guy that had to pick it off.
Right.
Like, that's hilarious. But, yeah, I think that I am just more and more impressed with this team. Each week, I've been steadily impressed, and I'm hoping that we can continue this streak of getting better every week.
So that's our offensive talk. I mean, there really isn't a whole lot else to talk about the offense. Now let's move to the defense a little bit. And again, we talked about it last week about how everybody's kind of sharing the love. This week, everybody shared the love as well. Elandon Roberts got home on the quarterback. Nick Herbig had a pair of sacks in his effort. Yeah. And we'll talk about this in a little bit, but Nick Herbig is going to be very important moving forward. Cam Hayward, he finally got home, this week. Like, you talked about it, like, this defense is so deep and it's so good that if it stays healthy, it can be one of the best defenses in the league. The defense in the second half against the Chargers had 5 sacks and -4 yards given up.
Oh, I loved seeing that stat. Like, I couldn't believe it. -5 yards. Like, I remember, like, halfway through the second half, they were like, wow, the Chargers only have, like, 10 yards of offense. And then, 2 sacks later, it's, like, -4. And I'm like, I don't care who the offense is. If you hold them to -4 yards and a half, how could you not be called the best? And I think the secondary, Patrick Queen had a couple of nice hits. And, so it wasn't just the D-line. It was the secondary and the middle. And I would love to shout out TJ Watt is half a sack away from getting 100 sacks. I believe if he does it, I'm assuming he would. In the next game, he'd be the youngest to 100. And Cam Hayward, if I remember hearing it correctly, with his sack this past week, put him second in all-time Steelers sacks.
Wow.
Which is, talk about passing James Harrison. That's no light feat at all. So to see that is just amazing. And to see, not only his pass effect, but his run game. He just clogs up the middle. It is unbelievable how amazing Cam Hayward is at stopping the run. And, yeah, again, just a combined effort of everybody putting it together and making the plays that need to be made. And I love it. I think our team has such unity, and it works together so well. It really feels like a bonded, united team, and I love it.
So I saw this clip just a couple of minutes ago, right before we started recording. So Cam Hayward has his own podcast or something like that, and he had Justin Fields as a guest on the podcast. And Hayward he shot him straight. He asked him straight up, who's had it better? Who have you liked better? The Bears or the Steelers? And without a single iota of hesitation, Justin Fields is like, the Steelers, man. The Steelers. He's like, the team. Hayward asks, who has better teammates? The Steelers, undoubtedly. Like you said, this is a closely knit group of guys. And I don't want to say that they're almost in the power of friendship territory for the reason that they're 3-0, but it's kind of seeming like that. I think everybody in the league is still wondering about the Steelers. And if you just look at the stat sheet, you wouldn't think that they're the greatest team of all time. But if you actually watch the games, like this this team is really, really good, which is not something I don't think we were expecting it to be quite this good.
No, and I completely agree. I mean, I love to hear that from Justin. Just the unity, and I think that I don't know if this is like this team unity that we're seeing right now. I don't know if this has been what Tomlin has been going for all along, and he's finally got all the pieces he's needed and like all the guys to be, invested in this team unity. I mean, of course, it's rare when I give Tomlin credit, but maybe like his system of trying to build a team and build team unity and be a motivator, he's finally gotten the players that want that. And maybe in the past, he just hasn't had guys, who are focused on themselves versus, the team. And maybe we're finally seeing that Tomlin effect take place here this year. Who knows? But I love it. And I saw something on, I was watching a mic'd up thing, and Watt made a play, or the defense made a play, and he like walked off to the sideline and was like, let's go. And then he like turned to Justin and was like, let's go, Justin, like go make a play or something. And I think that's the first time ever mic'd up I've heard TJ Watt go and talk to the offense, especially the quarterback. Like, I think that this team, there's just a sense of brotherhood and unity, and like it's not just offense and defense, it's a whole team.
Right, and I think that's something that was maybe even taboo when Kenny Pickett was the quarterback. I mean, you talked about it. I think you said this last year. I don't remember exactly, but I think you said this last year. I don't think that anybody on the defense actually liked anybody on the offense. You said it that it seemed like the both sides of the ball were so compartmentalized that, the defense never talked to the offense never talked to the defense. And now you're seeing these worlds collide with Watt and Fields talking together, and it's like because they actually enjoy each other. They're feeding off of each other. The offense is staying on the field longer, and the defense is allowing themselves to do that because they're getting off the field. The offense stays out there, and the defense isn't catching their breath every 5 seconds because there's another 3 and out. And it's because the unity of the team. It just seems like it's motivating those things. And I didn't see that specific clip that you're talking about, but that is really encouraging. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's awesome because I think I said something like that last year. It just seemed like nobody really talked to Kenny or really enjoyed spending time with each other. So the fact that that's going on is just I love it. I love it. I'm a huge team guy. Huge unity guy. Like if I was a coach, I would just try and get these guys to feel like brothers. And that's what it looks like on the field and off the field right now. Absolutely.
All right. So let's talk about maybe a couple of things that are going to affect us moving forward. So unfortunately this week, we kind of caught a little bit of the injury bug, which is one of those caveats to saying that we have the best defense in the league. Corey Trice, unfortunately, he is going on the injured list. He left the game with an injury. He'll be out for at least 4 weeks. Alex Highsmith came out of the game pretty early, and he is also going to be hitting the injured list. So he'll be out for the next several weeks. But I think this gives an absolutely massive opportunity for Nick Herbig. And you absolutely love him with how fast he gets off the block. And it seems like that he's one of those guys that's just, he's begging for a chance. And I really like the depth that we have with Herbig kind of coming in out of the bullpen in a way. And as much as Alex Highsmith is a game wrecker, I think Nick Herbig's going to step up big time.
Oh, I completely agree. It's very sad that Corey Trice is going back on because I think he'd been playing, great football. But I honestly, I love Alex Highsmith. He has a place in my heart. I love, and I've, what you were saying, I've loved seeing Nick Herbig. And I wish that we could have 3 edge rushers. So, honestly, I'm not too worried about this replacement. I think that I don't think Nick Herbig is going to miss a beat. I mean, coming in for a half and getting 2 sacks and a forced fumble, I think that he's going to come in and thrive, especially, against opposed to TJ Watt. Both of them, I say, could combine for 3 or 4 sacks again. And so I think that we feel pretty well. I don't know who's going to fill in for Corey Trice, so that could be a little bit more of concern, but I think that our secondary is still pretty solid.
So they elevated James Pierre from the practice squad, which was something that I don't know if we actually mentioned it last week, but it's something that did happen. They did bring him back. So he'll probably be back there at least a little bit for Corey Trice. The other thing too, and this was known, I think, before the game actually happened, but Troy Fatanu, our first round pick, is also going on the injured list, which does stink. But there is a shot that we do get Isaac Samalu back this week. So perhaps a little bit more of like a solid group like on the offensive line, which, I mean, I'll ask your opinion on this. What did you think of the offensive line this last week?
So I feel like it was a tale of two halves. I feel like the first half, we had like 14 yards on the ground. Najee was getting hit at the line of scrimmage every play. There was sacks, bad sacks. And I was like, oh gosh, this is like the offensive line of last year. And then the second half, I mean, it was a different team. Like it was a different O-line. I don't know if Fields got touched once in the second half. And, Najee ended up having over 70 yards in the whole game. And so I think that first half, very concerned, was wondering what was going on. But second half, they righted the ship and really, got the run game going, protecting Fields well. So I hope that they can kind of keep on to that momentum, and hopefully Samalu can come back. And, yeah, I'm very optimistic about the O-line.
So you're talking about the running game a good bit, and I think we have to mention this as well. Cordero Patterson, late in the game, was absolutely dominant.
Oh, he was running angry. Like he was just going and plowing people over. And he was running with a lot of energy and I loved it. I'm glad you brought him up because I kind of forgot. But he did have some great runs, some solid runs to really kind of clinch, chewing the clock out. And yeah, I think that I love that tandem of, Najee and, Warren, and then in the fourth quarter wearing him down also with Patterson.
Well, that's the thing is Cordero Patterson is built pretty much exactly like Najee is. And usually, obviously, you want to use Najee early on in the game, but to have another guy who's like a big back late in the game to kind of close things out, I mean, we saw that on full display this last week. And Najee himself, he almost scored at the very end. He got down at the 1. And, if he gets another yard, that game's 27-10. So, I mean, the score is only a 10-point game, but I think it even plays a little bit bigger than it was.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think for sure. And I think just being able to see that, again, it kind of goes back to the whole team, just seeing all of these different aspects come into play that we haven't seen yet, or just seeing things better than we've seen. I think it's so encouraging, especially against like the Chargers, and then I know everyone's going to be like, well, Justin Fields went out of the game. And it's like, whatever. We were dominating them on defense before Justin Fields came out of the game.
Justin Herbert.
Oh, yeah. So sorry. Justin Herbert.
You're good.
Justin Herbert. And, their defense is still their defense. And we were able to run the ball and throw the ball and score, 13 points in the second half, which doesn't sound like much, but it's, it was a solid 13 points, and just to allow nothing on the defensive side, I think it just is very encouraging and exciting to see all that take place.
Absolutely. I mean, the encouragement that I've received just from watching this last week, I mean, it's been really refreshing. I don't know the last time I've really experienced a win like this, a win that just feels so satisfying in a way. And now they turn their attention to the Indianapolis Colts, who I think this is a really, really intriguing matchup. And obviously both of us, we've talked about it on and off air, that we are kind of riding this high a good bit. And I'm looking at this matchup, and I really hate to say it, but I really feel like this is a trap game.
Interesting. I think that's interesting because I honestly don't. I think that I see the Cowboys as a trap game. I see the Colts were able to continue to do what we're doing. Anthony Richardson has been making mistakes. I think that we're going to keep continuing him, forcing him into mistakes. And I think that the pressure is just going to be a little bit too much for him. And, I mean, I haven't seen anything, special from their defense. So I think our offense can still move. It's funny that you say that because I definitely see the Dallas game as a trap game versus this one.
Interesting. Well, so the Colts are 1-2. They barely snuck by the Bears last week, and it wasn't necessarily anything that Anthony Richardson did to actually win the game. Caleb Williams just made a couple of bad throws at bad times, and that's kind of how the Bears lost that game. Now, the last 2 weeks, Jonathan Taylor has rushed for over 100 yards in each of the last 2 weeks. And I'm looking at this too. Alec Pierce is their best wide receiver. I mean, he's been the one that's getting behind the secondary and going for these big chunk plays that really helps Anthony Richardson's game because he is a deep ball threat. He's a guy that can throw the deep ball. But at the same time, his completion percentage is right around 50% in the first 3 weeks, which is just really, really not good. So this is a really interesting week. What are your initial thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that I was gonna point out that too. Like to your point, Jonathan Taylor, the past 2 games, has been the reason their offense has done anything successful. And so I think that like if we can stop him, I think that we can win pretty easily. And seeing what we did with J.K. Dobbins and Bijan Robinson, and we didn't play anyway, especially on week 2. But I feel confident that we can stop any runner. And so if that's what's causing the Colts offense to kind of take flight, I think that we could ground them. And then, Alec Pierce, that'll be interesting to see. I mean, we have Minka, so hopefully nothing goes deep. And we also have KZ. So, I think it's a good matchup for the Steelers.
So Pierce he's been just a speedster, honestly. And this is really a good opportunity for Minka to kind of make his statement on this upcoming game because he has been pretty much the only guy through the air that Richardson has found any half-decent connection with. Michael Pittman, honestly, has just been very quiet. He hasn't done really anything in the first 3 weeks. And Richardson has thrown 6 interceptions over the first 3 games. So this might be a game where the secondary is just kind of chomping at the bit and really looking for maybe a dominant game in the secondary, especially if they do force Jonathan Taylor to less than 4 yards a carry and they're kind of making the Colts offense one-dimensional. Again, it's an interesting matchup. And again, I think I say this because I'm always so like hesitant to just give our defense the flowers that they deserve. And like they've given up 26 points in 3 games. The Colts gave up 26 points in their week 1 loss to the Houston Texans. So I mean, again, if the defense continues to play the way that they have, this might be a blowout.
Oh yeah. I completely agree. I think that again, like it's a perfect matchup, and I'm excited to see. Like, of course, you get nervous because the Steelers always tend to oh my goodness, we're looking really good, everything's great. Then a team that's not so good comes in, or we go there and they kind of take care of business and kind of remind us, bring us back to earth. But I honestly just don't think it happens this week. I think that it's a good matchup, and I think that Lord willing, we just take care of business and move on to 4-0.
Well, you talk about taking care of business. I mean, they've taken care of business, obviously, to be 3-0. And right now, the Steelers are 2 games up on the division. For anybody that you want to look at, the Bengals are 0-3. They look awful. The Browns are 1-2. They look even worse. And the Ravens almost blew another lead to the Cowboys this last week. It was just based Derrick Henry. He finally got his legs turning at the end. But, I mean, right now, the AFC North is ours to lose. And I hate to say that in week 4, but it's looking that way.
I completely agree. I think that the Bengals are in a mess. I think that they're going to make their way back into it like they always do. And especially after their week 3 loss, they didn't necessarily look bad. The Commanders just looked, better. And the Ravens beating the Cowboys, I wasn't too impressed by it. The Derrick Henry, doing well, that's a little scary to see that. But I'm still not worried about it. And I'm never worried about a Browns team that is run by Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is, I mean, I would please start Deshaun Watson. Like that's how I view that. So I think that you're absolutely right. If we can just keep winning at a good percentage, like we have, like obviously, we're undefeated. I think that we can run away with this division, especially if we can win the divisional games and win these games that we should.
Well, that is what it boils down to this week. On paper, this is a game that the Steelers absolutely should win. And it comes down to, are they actually going to put away the opponents that they need to put away? We kind of we've broken the training wheels off, at least in these last 2 weeks. And if it continues to get better, again, it has a little bit of room to improve, but there's not a lot more that the Steelers can do to be any better than they currently are. I think if the offense scores more points, I think that is the only thing. But I mean, I think they've done the job in terms of doing what they need to do to win games. And I'll ask you this question because I know you hate it when I say this, but do you think that this was a formula week, this last week against the Chargers?
Honestly, no, because I think that, we didn't change too much, but I think that because of the second half is when we look so better. Like normally it's like, first half looks really good, then we barely hang on to the lead. This week it was like, first half, nothing's going right. So they went in at halftime and they obviously had to have changed something. And so I think that this was probably Arthur Smith because we know Mike Tomlin doesn't change. I think that they changed it up a little bit and realized like, hey, like we've got to, we can win. We just got to fix some things. So I think that it was still very similar. I would say it was formula adjacent, but we may have gone outside of it a little bit.
Well, I was going to say, I think that this was a formula week, and I think they just accidentally scored too many points, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, because we're not used to 50-plus yard touchdowns. So, I mean, that could be a good point.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I mean, obviously it was a great play call, and it worked, and Fields executed, and Calvin Austin is, arguably the fastest dude in the league, if you put him in a foot race. But like you said, I mean, we've talked about these 70-yard touchdowns a lot. They're not something that you can rely on. The thing that you can rely on is moving the ball. That is the most reliable way to score. You're going to get those 55-yard touchdowns on occasion. And honestly, I would hope to see this. Maybe they score more because of the throwing prowess that Justin Fields has demonstrated these last couple of weeks. Maybe that is something that we are going to have the luxury of this season, which is something that, we can't bank on necessarily, but maybe it is something that we can start to kind of have in the back of our mind, like, maybe there's a massive play coming up pretty soon.
And I hope that we get to see that. Like, I hope that we can get to a basis where it's like, it's an average day if Justin Fields throws for 250 yards. Because I think that, like, I would love to see our offense just get more and more yards, more and more points, because that's what we're going to need when we play the big teams. Like, let's help our defense out and let's score a lot too. And if we can get to that point, I think that we'll be pretty hard to beat. But what's your win prediction what's your prediction for this week?
Well, you're either tipping my hand or you're just dead wrong. And again, I think this is a trap game, and I still am not going to go away from that. But I think that the Steelers find a way to win this one. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this, I can't remember, but the first 3 weeks for the Colts have all been one-score games. So as much as I would love for this to be a big blowout win, I just don't see it happening. I think that this game is going to be a shootout in as far as it goes. I think the defense is finally going to look a little bit more human this week. You said it last week. The way that we play defense, we expect perfection, and perfection is just simply not attainable. I think this might be one of those weeks that Anthony Richardson maybe finds his stride a little bit. I think he might be a little bit more accurate this week. And maybe it's just because that the Colts dumb down the offense a little bit and give him more of an opportunity to complete some throws. I think this is going to be a shootout, and I think both defenses are going to struggle. I'm going to say that this one ends 27-24.
Okay, wow.
Steelers win, by the way. Steelers win.
Okay. Interesting. I think honestly, that our defense is going to stifle this young quarterback, and I think we're going to be able to stop the run relatively. I could see Jonathan Taylor, like if we have a good day, having just around 60 yards, and then obviously I would hope that Minka could, make the plays deep to stop Alec Pierce. I'm going to go with a win. I'm going to say our defense delivers. I'm going to say our offense keeps humming, running off the motivation from last week, and I say we win 23-10.
All right. So a big win for David. Wow. Is that the largest? Is that the largest differential you've ever predicted in a Steelers win?
It probably is. Unfortunately, it probably is.
Man, the 3-0 Steelers have us feeling some type of way. I'll tell you that right now.
Oh, they do. And hopefully it's not a disappointment come Sunday.
Well, that's definitely for sure. So we'll be watching eagerly. It'll be a fun watch. The Pittsburgh Steelers going into Indianapolis, trying to take on the Colts and be 4-0. Once again, trying to match that 2020 season when they started, what was it, 11-0?
Yeah, 11-0.
We'll talk about the 2020 season next week because I have some talking points about that. So
okay.
I'll save that for next week. So you better tune in next week for maybe a little bit of a rant of mine on the 2020 season. But we do want to say very proudly that the Boardman Black and Gold podcast is sponsored by Zeka Enterprises, crafting furniture solutions and proud supporter of the Boardman Black and Gold podcast, a premier American-made manufacturer with comprehensive line of quality school and office furniture. Call 919-406-4679 or visit ZekaEnterprises.com to learn more. David, we got to get this win this week. 4-0, I think would, again, obviously a win helps, but I think 4-0 would just, it might even just put away all the haters. I think that might be the case.
Absolutely. I think that the 4-0, like this win, I think you can really make a statement here and really give yourself a great start to the season. Like there's such a huge difference between 4-0 and 3-1. And if you start 4-0, I mean, you're really setting yourself up for success in the rest of the year.
And as of right now, the Pittsburgh Steelers are the number 1 seed in the on the East, or what is it? Well, I'm sorry, AFC. I'm thinking baseball. What am I thinking? Baseball playoffs are coming up pretty soon. I'm getting excited. But in the AFC, the Pittsburgh Steelers are number 1 because of their strength of victory. How often have we been able to say that? Strength of victory.
That's crazy. That is crazy. Like you think even more than the Chiefs and the Bills?
Yeah.
That is crazy. Yeah, I mean, I think that honestly, this is a must win to keep the momentum going and to make it feel like it's different than any other year.
If the Steelers can win this week, not only will they display to themselves that they are legit, but again, I totally believe, even though the vibes are already high in the Pittsburgh area, I think it would completely convince Yinzers alike that this team is legit, and it might start to put the league on notice. Obviously, you talk about it a lot. We like to be the underdogs, but maybe this is a year we start to play like we actually own the place.
I would love to see that, and I do hope that this is the year. Like, please just be the one. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for, and I would love to see us continue that.
Well, we've got a big week against the Indianapolis Colts. Again, it is the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. Zane and David, we are so happy to be able to talk about Steelers football with you. This is something that we enjoy doing every single week. It gives us a reason to keep chatting with each other. Also gives us a reason to talk about sports. And what better time to be a Steelers fan than right now at 3-0, hoping to be 4-0 after a Here We Go Steelers victory against the Indianapolis Colts. David, you got any closing thoughts?
Man, I just think, we'll see you next week, and hopefully, like what you just said, it'll be after a win. And if it's after a win, you probably see us be the most positive we've ever been on the podcast.
Oh, man, how crazy would that be? How crazy would a positive David be? We've already started to see little sprinklings of it with that 23-10 win prediction, but hey, if it pulls through, then this might be a one-off episode coming up next week. There might never have been a Boardman Black and Gold podcast so positive if the Steelers can win this week.
I'd love to see it. I would genuinely love to see it.
Well, again, we will be with you once again next week. Thanks for listening to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast, sponsored by Zecca Enterprises. Here we go, Steelers. Go beat them Colts.